Hi, good morning. This is Raan Oosha, talking about
Good morning to you.
Good morning, Stephen. Today I'll be talking with Stephen Lin, and this project is about speaking with people that I've met on my journey about their own spiritual experiences. So this morning I'm talking to Stephen Lin. Are you in Singapore, Stephen?
Yes, I am in Singapore, just a couple of degrees north of the equator.
Okay, so
Yep.
I met Stephen about a year and a half ago while I was doing the Psych K course, and then we kept in touch. So I thought it'd be really interesting to speak about his journey and what he's up to. But Stephen, could we talk about where you're from and how this all started for you?
Sure. Okay, so I am actually an engineer by profession, and one would not normally think of engineers as having a spiritual journey, because we are really all about black and white, things like that. And but I am on the spiritual path, and it started way back when I was a child and I didn't even know it. Anyway, here in Singapore, we are a very multicultural society. There's a mix of Indians, Malays, Chinese, Eurasians, and people from all walks of life here. My background, my ancestors came over to Singapore from China, so I do have a little bit of the culture of Chinese in me. And one of the things that I do practice is also a 5,000-year-old tradition of Qigong, right? But let's go back to where it all started. As I reflect, my spiritual journey started way back when I didn't even know of the word spiritual. When I was a child, we didn't have handphones and things like that at that time. All we had were, comic books and stuff like that. So as I traveled to and from school, every day is about an hour and a half journey, and I sat in the bus. One of the things I liked to do was to just stare out the window and drift. And drift I did sometimes, and I played mind games, and I imagined myself trying to, very practical things, trying to solve problems, thinking about life as solving problems as in real problems, as in mathematics. And I found that when I just simply blanked out everything, I could arrive at the answer without thinking through all the steps. And actually, I amazed myself, and I didn't know what that was all about. I tried that a few times. It always worked. I tried that more than mathematics on other stuff. And I found that I arrived at a solution without having to think about it. And I wanted to discover a little bit more about what it was. So I went to the library, tried to look things up, but the trouble was I didn't know where to look, and there wasn't Google at that time, right? So I couldn't find out anything. And when I talked to friends about it, they were kind of like, yeah, what the hell are you talking about? So anyway, so that was that. And I left it, and never occurred to me again. And I went through my whole journey, continuing my studies, becoming an engineer, working as an engineer. At some point, as I grew much older, I was looking for other stuff, and one of which was really about my health. And in doing that, I decided to take up an art called Qigong, which is an ancient Taoist understanding of the life force that flows through all of us. And so I practice it firstly for health reasons, and then I began to study the philosophy of it all. And then basically, it talked about the goal of everybody doing Qigong is to return to the original self that we were born with all the original energies, and the reunification with the oneness. So I began to look up all these things, learn it from an intellectual point of view. And then I started to recall those things that happened when I was a child, and where I could really, and I finally knew it, I could really connect with consciousness and find out the answers to things simply because of being connected. So that amazed me. And since then, I have been on this journey trying to learn more, not just from an intellectual sense, but from an experiential sense of what being spiritual is like. And to me, being spiritual is really about returning to our origins, returning to where we came from, returning back to the oneness, the consciousness that is with us all. And which is why when Raan asked me to share a poem, this one from T.S. Eliot really stuck out at me. And maybe I just read it very quickly, right? And by the way, I just removed a few sentences, and this is just an excerpt from the entire poem. It is from Little Gidding by T.S. Eliot. And the end of all our exploring will be to arrive where we started and know the place for the first time through the unknown, unremembered gate. When the last of earth left to discover is that which was the beginning. Not known because not looked for, but heard, half heard in the stillness between two waves of the sea. So really, this speaks to me is that because we all start our journey when we come to earth, when we grow up, we want to explore everything there is to explore. We want to travel. We want to learn what there is to learn in science, in literature, whatever. But in the end, the one part that we have not really fully explored, at least for most people, is ourselves. And not just ourselves as it is today, but ourselves as it was originally when we came to earth. Because when we came to earth, when we were born with this connection to the divine, to the consciousness still intact. But we lost it all. We lost it. It was educated out of us. We lost it because of our other experiences that we have on earth. And there is a reason for all that too, why we are put on earth. But as in Qigong, we were born with original Qi, which is very powerful. And through the food we take, through the thoughts we have, we lose the strength and the power of the original Qi. And all we do in Qigong is to restore as close as we can back to the original Qi. So similarly, in the spiritual sense, we came with this connectedness. We have a gateway back to this connect. We had the gateway to this connectedness when we were children, but we lost sight of that gateway. And it is our journey to discover that gateway, rediscover that gateway, right? And which is why part of the poem is, right, to know the place where we started for the very first time and go back through the unknown, unremembered gate, right? This poem talked about the unremembered gate. It was there, we've forgotten it. And to me, this path of spirituality is really to rediscover where that gate was and how we can come back to it and go back through it. I hope it all makes sense.
Yes. Can you explain what exactly Qi is?
Okay, so Qi is what we call the life force. The easiest, most graphic way to explain it is using Star Wars, you know, the force be with you, right? And as I know it, George Lucas had inspiration for that also from talking about life force application, although he did not use Qigong. So Qi is something from which the world originated, right? It was the original force that is there before, that was there before even there was matter, before energy. It is from Qi that it is all formed. And if we want to look back at from a religious perspective, I really frankly do not think it differs a lot with talking about the spirit that flowed over the earth from the biblical references, right? So the Qi is the original life force. It is something that is so intangible that you cannot see it, you cannot touch it. And it is from this Qi that all things were made. And up till today, it flows through us all and gives us life. And the idea in the practice of Qigong is when this Qi that flows through us is disturbed, then problems arise. Because the Qi is all-knowing, it helps to repair what goes wrong in the body. But when it can no longer move through our bodies in a smooth and uninhibited way, simply because of the thoughts we have, or because of the food we eat, which causes blockages, or which causes maybe sometimes it flowing in the wrong way, then we start to get illnesses, right? And that's a physical manifestation of Qi.
Does Qi have anything to do with chakras?
Good question. Now, here's the thing. I cannot explain to you a lot about chakras because I did not study it a lot. What I do know is that the chakras, there are many points in Qigong that coincide with the chakras. And those are the points, that we use. For example, the three main so-called reservoirs of energy in the body, according to Qi, is just under the abdomen, just under the belly button, right? That coincides with one of the chakras, although I can't name it now. And then there's that's the lower reservoir. And then the middle reservoir is round about just between the heart and the solar plexus. I think that coincides with another chakra. And the highest and the upper reservoir of Qi energy is here, right behind the middle of the forehead, between the eyes, and that coincides with yet another chakra. So I do sense that the origin of both the chakra system and the Taoist system, they probably came from the same source, although in the end, over the millennia, it has been practiced a little differently and interpreted a little differently and practiced a little differently.
You said a lot of this opening started when you were young. Do you think of maybe a previous life you came into this, or you just have an intuitive feel for it?
I do not know if it's intuitive or what. It was just simply what I experienced. I have not even thought about whether there was a previous life or not. I just know that that is what I experienced. And it was real at that time. I forgot about it, not forgot about it. I just put it out of my life because nobody else talked about it. And now that I'm able to discover more, one of the beautiful things of internet and stuff like that, that you can learn more, that, communicate with and learn more than just the friends you have, than the people you contact with. I start to learn more that those experiences that I had are not entirely unique, that they have happened to people before, and there's actually some studies on it, right? I used to call it thinking without thinking, you know, so I could connect all the way to the end result without even thinking. I used to just simply call it thinking without thinking, but now I know that it's about connectedness.
Can you explain again about, you said the gateway. Is that a gateway from consciousness through our own bodies?
Yes. Okay. We were born with an umbilical cord, not a physical umbilical cord, but a spiritual umbilical cord back to our origins, which is the consciousness, right? And this umbilical cord, as a child, as children, we were there. That's why children see angels, children see things, children talk to beings that we don't see, and we think that they are just imaginary. But right now, I do not think it's imaginary anymore, right? So as children, we had the umbilical cord, and that's what probably another description of the gateway back to the consciousness. Okay, so when we grow up, we start to get intellectual with a lot of things. Nobody ever teaches us anything spiritual, but I think things are starting to change now. And we learn all the scientific cause and effect, and everything must go by its order from A to B to C to D and so on. And therefore, we miss that direct consciousness from that direct connection from A to Z forward and backwards to where we came from, right? So spirituality is looking for that connection, looking for that umbilical cord that we severed, right? I use the word gateway simply because it appeared in T.S. Eliot's poem, right? So it's the connection back to the source, which I believe we were born with, and deaf, and we had it, which means it is still in us somewhere, and we have to discover it, rediscover it back, because it's forgotten, the unremembered gate, according to T.S. Eliot. I'm not sure if he meant it that way, but that's the way I read that poem.
So what happens to us as children? Because we seem to grow up with these expansive imaginations, insensitivity feelings. So what happens to us?
Well, I do not know what you call it. You can call it is educated out of us. It was cultured out of us. It was driven out of us by our parents, by our teachers, by whoever had influence over us. It was driven out of us by religion, you know, stuff like that. And that's one aspect. The second aspect was that there was no way as children we could communicate with anybody else about how these things were going on and how we could keep them, right? We were just simply not at that able to do that. So yeah, how did we get rid of it? Basically educated and cultured out of us, I think. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it seems to be just education, just being born in a system where we go to school, we go to work, we get a job. It seems to be very straight lined without looking at the deeper aspects of ourselves. That's never looked at. I mean, so the question, what's your passion in life? What are you really want to do? That's kind of a question that's never really been asked. We don't get asked.
Yes, we don't get asked that. We may get asked some things like, you know, what you want to be when you grow up, but generally, I think there is a lack of guidance or you know, guidance in terms of spirituality, right? And I'm separating spirituality from religion. When you grow up, there is a lot of indoctrination with religion, but I do not see, at least not in this society where I'm in, a lot of guidance in spirituality. Perhaps in some of those other countries where they are so-called less advanced, where they have their roots more in their culture, they may have a lot more guidance in spirituality, and I don't know.
So growing up in a place where there's such a diverse background, you must have come
Yes.
across, Hinduism, Buddhism, Zen. Did any of that impact your life?
Not at that time, because when we grew up, all these other religions, okay, Hinduism was considered another religion, right? And in that religion, when I grew up, it was all about Hinduism having gods, many different gods, and praying to the gods and all that kind of stuff. So I didn't go into it because I had a Christian upbringing, and the Christian upbringing means worshiping gods is taboo, right? So I never really gave it much thought. It's only in the last number of years that I start to discover Hinduism and some of the ancient religions for their philosophy, for what they're trying to tell, more than about worshiping any god anywhere.
Have you found that there's a connection, if you look deeply within the religions, to a spirituality which has been lost along the way through the writing? So in Christian mysticism and in Buddhism and in Hinduism, that there is an interlocking deeper spirituality.
I believe so. Even in the Christian tradition, there are the mystics in the Christian world. Having said that, I think a lot of these more mystic and spiritual teachings or learnings, I think have bypassed, or the majority of people, or rather majority of people, have not had the opportunity to hear them in the past, because in the past you only could get at these teachings when you had a direct contact with the teachers or the people. And if you were born outside or live somewhere else that is geographically distant from where these teachers were, you had no opportunity. That's how I look at it. But now, because of the internet, right, technology can be a bane for a lot of people, but it can be a boom for certain things. And this is one of the things it is a boom for, where people who want to discover can start to discover more things, right? And I believe these teachings can, I believe there is a spiritual awakening of sorts that is going on right now. More and more people that I know are on the spiritual path, and even those that are not on the spiritual path, they are open to these things more so than in the past.
Yeah, I noticed around that even people who've not even before had an interest in it are now incorporating into their life. And do you think that maybe in the past we separated spirituality and our work life, and we did one and we still continue, and the work life was separate, all our family life was separate?
We talk about spiritual life and work life. In the past, yes, it was separated. It's still very much separated today when you come to corporations. When you come to independent entrepreneurs, many, I think, are embracing spiritual life. And well, whether they are looking at spiritual life from a pure spiritual perspective, or they're using it as a strategy for their business, I don't know, right? But I do know that many small business owners, and especially individual entrepreneurs, are embracing the spiritual part. Having said that, in the corporate world, there is still a resistance, not so much the resistance from the individuals within the corporations, but for the corporations as a whole to embrace it. Here's what I mean, okay? A entrepreneur being in charge of their own business and taking all their accountability themselves would very gladly, take from their account and, go and practice spirituality somewhere, maybe hire, maybe join in retreat somewhere. But in terms of corporations to incorporate such things into the corporate budget, I believe there's still a resistance. That they go for such thing as mindfulness is only because somebody somewhere in the United States has done a doctoral study on the usefulness of mindfulness, right? But when you come to more spiritual stuff, I don't think that they are really at that stage where they want to, where anybody wants to stick their head out and have a corporate budget for spiritual stuff. So in that sense, yes, it is separate. That's how I look at it. Yeah.
Because I guess that if we want to change things, a lot of the things that corporations do to this planet, and the destruction which has happened, it needs to have some kind of spiritual basis involved in it. I remember reading a lot of your messages about trees that had been cut down in Singapore and the environmental damage which is going on. How does spirituality and the environment come together?
It's good that you will ask that. And here is where I think there is a convergence between spirituality and science, right? I use a science called systems thinking or complexity science in management. By the way, I'm also a corporate consultant, a management consultant, and my work is based on the idea of systems thinking and complexity science, which is a science, a genuine science, right? To cut the long story short, when you look in terms of systems, there is always a hierarchy of systems, systems within systems within systems. So very simply put, right? You are a complete system as a person. And you are composed of smaller systems, which are your organs. And the systems work together to make you a living being. Now, so that has no interest to organizations. But what interests organizations is when groups of people, individuals come together, right? So an individual is a system, a team is a higher system, right? And you go for a higher group of system, you can be a division, a business unit is a higher level of system, and then you come to an organization which is a bigger system. So it's a system stacked with it, system within systems, and there's always a higher outer system. So when you come to the macro perspective, you have organizations being in the larger system called the economy, being in the larger system called the earth, and then what after the earth, right? We come to the system of systems, which is the galaxy and energy and all that. Now, that is already in mainstream science. So now, when we want to talk about the corporate world being more mindful of the exploitation of resources, right? We go up to the level of looking at the interconnectedness between between everything that happens on Earth, and we look at the Earth as a system. Okay, so in a sense, what I'm trying to say is we don't even have to mention the word spirituality there. We can talk about it, and there is a body of science around it by this guy called Fritjof Capra, who is who expounds the view of the systems view of the world. And the idea is now to bring corporate leadership to look at systems, not just at the organization level, not just look at the industry level, but to look at it from a higher level, from the earth perspective, and know that everything is interconnected, because it is. In fact, everybody, when you explain this to them, instinctively understands it. It's whether or not they accept it and whether or not they see the consequences to be within their lifetime. And if it's not within their lifetime, whether they care enough that the consequences will come in somebody else's lifetime.
Mm.
Right? But you're right, spirituality has a part to it, because when we talk about systems, what is the highest level of system? That's the universe. That's the all-in-one, all consciousness.
Mm. There's a man I've been reading, his name is Neely Fuller, and he says that we have to get to the way of thinking of ourselves as universal human beings and get past the small, the town, the country, even the earth, and think of us.
Yes.
And it's not a concept that he says we have to try to believe in. It's an actual fact, ourselves as universal human beings. Are we sometimes disconnected from each other and ourselves and people around us? And we have these boundaries called countries and states, which separates us, which makes it difficult to think on a universal level.
Yes. Yes. And that is what the Buddhists would call the illusion of separateness. Right? We fool ourselves through our education, through whatever, into thinking that we are separate when we are not. We are one.
Mm.
Yeah. And truly, one of the things is that I think we need to return to the one. Having said that, that is a concept that would take some convincing to a lot of people. I'm not sure if you can convince people to do that. They have to come to it themselves, I think. Whereas if we just use some concepts that are so-called founded on science, then it's easier to convince. That's why I talked about systems.
So, yeah, I mean, when we start to look at so where we are right now, especially in this environment in
Yes.
COVID time, and we've heard of the term the Great Awakening.
Yes.
Do you think that's some kind of a spiritual explosion or spiritual breaking out, that people are going to start looking deeper within themselves?
Well, you know, the old hair song, The Age of Aquarius, we are supposed to be coming into the Age of Aquarius and the big awakening and all that. I haven't put too much thought into whether we are in an explosion or not, but I do believe that certainly what I see around is that more and more people are being open to it, right? Even those who are in the past would have been constrained by their religion to think about it, or constrained by their logical thought to think about it, are now more open to it for a few reasons, because I mean, essentially it's a snowball effect. The more people that buy into it, the more people will come along, will be attracted to it, right? And also not just the snowball effect, but also the convergence of science to this spiritual thinking in the last 20 years or so. Quantum physics, you know, quantum physics talks about things that in the past only mystics talked about us being able to choose our reality of the observer, this influencing the reality about the observer actually making the realities happen. This is part of quantum physics now. Okay, I don't claim to know a lot about quantum physics, but what I know is this, right? And at the highest levels of scientific thinking, many, from what I know, embrace spirituality. There is a picture of the entrance to the CERN facility in Switzerland. That is where they have the massive colliders, right? To look at the smallest particles, the God particles, whatever you call it, trying to recreate the quarks and stuff like that. They have these Colliders billion-dollar facilities. The entrance to it, the scientists dedicated a statue of the Lord Shiva. And why do they do that? The idea is that they believe that the ancient stories of the Lord Shiva is basically the dance of the cosmic dance is really a metaphor of how the world actually works in their scientific understanding. So it seems to be converging there, right?
It seems that many of the old religions in Hinduism and in ancient Egypt,
yes,
what they used was metaphor to explain the, as you said, the cosmic dance. But it seems that many religions took them literally. And they were speaking about us as a universal beings and as consciousness. And they use metaphor in their stories, which seems that was misunderstood and were taken literally.
Yes. Well, it is such a thing, right? Such an irony, right? I believe that they were spoken of in metaphors at that time, in stories, simply so that human beings could understand. I don't think there was language at that time or basic scientific understanding at that time to try and teach quantum physics to people at that time, right? So the only way it could be explained was through metaphors. And so now, then you have to question, okay, so they speak in metaphors so that people can at least understand it through the stories. So you have to ask yourself, then where did that knowledge come from? So that is the big mystery. Where did that knowledge come from? Right? And there are many theories of where that knowledge came from, if indeed they were really metaphors, which I believe they are. So we're talking about ancient intelligence, I don't know. Ancient astronauts, I don't know. Where did that original knowledge come from, right? Or are we indeed left here by the gods, whatever you call, you consider the gods to be?
What role, or if any role, does a meditation play in your life?
Meditation helps me to connect, right? It helps me to try and recreate what I did when I was younger, that part about connecting with consciousness, about thinking without thinking. Okay, so meditation is the way that I have been able to at least partially recreate what I experienced as a child from that point of view. And well, there are many forms of meditation, right? I do not do all forms. I do not use the mantras and stuff like that. What I do is try to connect to the consciousness. That's one part. The other part is to connect to my dreams. And the other, and one final part of meditation, type of meditation that I practice a lot is mindfulness. I try to at least, right, to be totally mindful in all things that I do. Just a simple example, right? When I fold clothes, I fold it nicely, focusing only on folding clothes, right? When I take a walk in the forest, I focus only on walking the forest and smelling the forest air and breathing in the air. So that's mindfulness meditation. So yeah, I don't claim to practice meditation very deeply, not the transcendental kind, but these few types, right? Mindfulness, trying to reconnect to my consciousness. These are essentially what I do in terms of meditation.
I always thought, and and reading the works of Krishnamurti, that meditation is just being aware, and you can bring that into. I know in Zen they talk about, if you're washing your plates, just to wash your plates, and you
Yes.
said if you're folding your clothes, just to fold your clothes. And I thought that maybe a lot of times we go to center to do meditation practice. Like maybe it's to bring the practice out of the hall and into our daily lives. So if we're writing, that's meditation. If we're sitting, that's meditation. If you're walking in the trees, that's meditation.
Absolutely. And that is what mindfulness is. And I'm really surprised people actually pay thousands of dollars to go for a mindfulness meditation course when it is right in front of them. All they need to do is be mindful of what they do. And I always tell my clients that, right, my non-corporate clients, that is, you meditate wherever you are, right? And just be mindful, be aware.
I think what you said there as well, it's so powerful to be mindful wherever you are. Just that one way of being can be so transformative. And if one person is doing that, then meditation is happening. Maybe we're not recognizing the power of just being where you are in that space, in the here and now. And that can be so transformative.
Absolutely. The thing is now, there are more challenges than before to do that. Just take your handphone, for instance. People don't even know when they take a subway, they're not even conscious about anybody around them except on their handphones. And when they're on their handphones, they're not being mindful or aware of where they are. They are just transported to wherever they are transported to on their handphones, whether they are watching Netflix or answering emails or chatting with friends. That's the challenge nowadays. There is simply too much distraction going on, in my view, for a person to be mindful. But on the other hand, right, you can be, if you choose to, you can be mindful anywhere at any time.
Can you tell us about your dreams and the meditation you said, and how you access your dreams or what happens?
Okay, so I'll take you back in time to some of my other experiences. Okay, there were times when I felt really good, and I was pursuing goals. And well, when we were young, one of the goals we pursue are, romance, stuff like that, And when you feel good and when you think about it unconsciously, you don't treat it as meditation, and you go to sleep with it, and then you dream about all the nice things you have that you get out of the relationship, that enables you to do a lot of things, and you wake up, you're feeling all empowered, and throughout the day, nothing goes wrong, right? So that is what I experienced myself. And then I forgot about it, obviously. And then I started listening to and reading a guy called Dyer. I'm sure you are familiar with him, right? So essentially, what I understand now is that in your dreams, you are reconnected for a while with your consciousness. You are back to where you actually are, right? Some say when you're awake, you're actually in the dream, but when you're in the dream, you're actually awake back in your consciousness. So the idea is what you take with you to the dreams is what will manifest. And I have tried that out, and I work with people and I talk with people, and they have tried it out, and it is something that is so powerful. So to your question, what do I mean by meditation? That is really to recall the feelings of having achieved something. It could be something in the past, or it could be something in the future. You recall you have the feeling of that dream, and when you go to sleep, you take it with you to your dreams. And in your dreams, because you are connected, the universe opens up things for you, gates for you, doors for you, to allow all those things to happen. And you may even get messages related to them. So that is what I mean by using meditation to connect back to your dreams.
I've had a friend who's been asking me recently about manifesting.
Yes.
And what you just said there about taking it, what you feel, or what you would like to happen,
Yes.
taking it before you go to sleep, and using your dreams as a way to open in the gateway.
Yes.
So could you explain that process in regards to maybe somewhere you would like to be, and using that and using your dreams as a way to get there?
Okay. So before I go into that, let me just give you a very short phrase, right? The short phrase is simply this: feeling is the prayer. And this is something that has been understood and practiced by many ancient traditions, and recently I discovered it through my searchings. And what I mean by feeling is the prayer, right? You can sit down there, you can kneel, you can do whatever, you can pray for things using words. That's one thing. But the real prayer that you bring to whoever you pray to is the feeling of it. As long as you have the feeling of it being manifested and happening, then it will occur, because feeling is the prayer. And so now, how do we make this manifesting happen? Supposing you have a goal, I don't know, whatever goal that is, right? Let's just pick one, the goal of, getting your master's degree, let's just say, right? So you picture yourself visually having already gotten the master's degree, not wishing for it, but having already gotten it. Picture it, right? Hear the sounds you hear when you already gotten it, and then feel the feeling that you have when you have already gotten the master's degree. Not if, but when you already have it. And then capture that feeling of already obtaining that master's degree, right? And you bring up this feeling just before you go to sleep. Just like when you are in love, you have that feeling of that full love for whoever it is that you love. Just before you go to sleep, it's so comforting, it's so nice, and you just want to fall asleep with it. So here, you fall asleep with the feeling of achieving that which you want to achieve, which is, the example here is the obtaining the master's degree. And then when you go and sleep, things will happen because you are reconnecting back to the consciousness, right? Just like when you're in love, in the sleep, you will dream all the lovely dreams of what you do with your loved one. And when you go to sleep with this dream, with this feeling of having achieved what you want to achieve, right? You will get the messages around it too. And when you wake up, carry on having that dream for the first 5 minutes when you wake up. So the last 5 minutes before you sleep, bring up that feeling of having achieved, not saying, please give it to me. No, but having achieved it, right? Go to sleep, wake up, continue having that feeling, and try it. You'll find it work wonders.
I guess that is, it tunes into being out of time, because if you already have it, you're there. It's in the here and now. If you try to say I want it, you're looking at time, and you're having I want it means actually you're sending out I don't have it. But if you have it already, you're actually sending out there that feel good vibration already.
Yes, because here's the other thing I learned from spirituality. There is no time. Time is an illusion. Past, present, and future are merged into one. So if you think of what we call time, what we call tomorrow, what we call next year now, and it is happening now, then it happens. Right? We choose the domain that we want to be in, just like we choose to think positively or negatively, just like we choose the world in which we live in. And here's the other thing, right? And here's where I merge science and spirituality as well. This idea of the multiverse, the infinite number of universes. It explains very easily why you say why it is said that you choose your reality, because there's an infinite number of universes out there where you could be in, where you actually are in, but you're not all places at one time. So you choose your consciousness to be in that particular one universe that you want to be in, right? So in another universe, you're dead already. In another universe, you are whatever, right? But in this universe, you are what you are, and you have chosen to be here. Right. Similarly, so that is the multiverse in terms of shall we say space, right? Folded space or whatever, and there is the multiverse in terms of time as well. There's only now.
Yeah. Is there ways, because I've heard people speak about it, and I've spoken about it, about there being no time. The order is, and that's our actual experience, always is, only have it has been, here and now.
Yes.
Can you please bring that, if you can, just in a simple form, about this timelessness? Because we hear about it and read about it, but sometimes it seems to be just too far away.
Yes. The best way I can explain that, and I can't explain it in words, is something that, other than just to use a simple English, right? That it is all here right now at the same time, past, present, and future. And it is something that cannot really be explained in terms of human concepts and human language. One of the mistakes we try to do is to explain everything, including spirituality, in terms of words, because language is limiting, human concept is limiting, which is why in the Taoist text, they say the Tao that can be named is not the Tao, right? The real Tao is something that you cannot explain. So some of these things, we just use simple English, and other than that, we cannot try to explain it more.
I think
I said simple English, simple language, any other language. Yeah.
I think that comes down to what we call spirituality. It's something that is felt within us. I mean, so you can read or study, but it's something that's experienced within ourselves.
Absolutely.
Sometimes we look outside for, which is all good because we can always read and learn more, but it's something to be experienced.
Yes, and it's experienced in a way that is unique to you, I believe, and it's experienced in a way that transcends the ability to communicate about it, which is why there are a lot of people who post on Facebook and, oh, I am awakened, I'm enlightened. I say, yeah, right, Yeah, not to be cynical or what, but I do believe that when you have achieved it, is something you can't explain in words,
So you said sometimes you speak with people about your spiritual practice.
Yes.
So what kind of things do you do?
Well, I usually, when I talk with people, I just talk with them. Hey, I have had this experience. Have you had this experience before? And then we just talk about experience in the best way we can. And it's through these conversations. It's only not too long ago that I started having more of these conversations with people, And I'm beginning to see that some of the things that I thought were strange are not strange anymore. Some of the things I thought were unique to me, that what's wrong with me, but it's not that anymore, right? So things we talk about basically experiences, right?
I remember talking about, incredible things. We had, I don't know if you remember, the last night I was in Singapore, we went out for dinner.
Yes.
And we spoke about, possibilities of potential of doing extraordinary things that we haven't yet tapped into. And I went away from that just tingling with, excitement about, we're just on the cusp of things that we don't even know that we don't know yet.
Yes.
Of possibilities. Is there anything you can add to that?
Well, when you were saying it, the one thing that sprung to mind is this, right? If you want to do great things, we start with the small things, right? Not everybody can go on and do great and wondrous things that shake the world, but we do shake the world in the small things that we do. And it lends more meaning if we understand the concept of being, there's this saying, right, that as without, so within. Okay, so it's essentially talking about, and that is basically my idea of infinity as well. The idea is that we are in the universe, but the universe is just a small speck on somebody else's elbow in a way out bigger system out there. And similarly, on our elbow, there's a small speck of universe that the whole of other beings experiencing infinity there. So what am I trying to say? What I'm trying to say is that we are the gods to whoever is inside us, right? And what's inside us is reflected outside of us. And if what's inside us is reflected outside of us, then whatever we do to ourselves, we are doing to the universe. So from that point of view, again, we want to aspire to do great things. We start the great things by doing the small things with ourselves.
That's like what you said. The simple things like walking in the park can be as transformative in itself. It's a simple thing, or a kind word.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
How you approach another. The simple thing, because as you say, everything is connected. If I speak to this person with just joy and love, they go away and it's now been passed, or it's now out there. You can't get it back. It's now out there.
Yes. Absolutely. So, I guess partly there's also the cycle that we go through, right? When you're in human years, right? Young, you're energetic, you want to go and change the world. And as you grow older, you change the world from within, from your family, from your little ones, and then from yourself out. And that ties in again with this whole idea of infinity, and this whole idea of about I know you know about the holographic
Yes.
concept, So what you do to yourself, you're doing to the world, actually. Yeah.
Could you go just a little bit into infinity?
Yes. So like I said, we are just, our universe is a speck on some bigger being's elbow, and similarly, somebody else's universe is a speck on our elbow. There is actually, the movie Man in Black.
Yes.
I don't know whether it's the first or second movie, and you have this galaxy on the cat's whatever.
Yeah,
collar,
yes, yeah. The cat's
and the galaxy just went into, and there's another. It's just a ball on a cat's necklace, right? And when they zoom into that, there's actually a whole universe inside there.
Yes.
and the whole universe inside there, and that's my idea of infinity.
Yes. That's remarkable, really. You know, you remember, if you think about ancient cultures who would look up at the sky at night, and of course, our Earth is so polluted with light pollution, we don't really see the stars in the sky anymore, especially here in London anyway. And you look up, and at night, if you look up, and then you just see this vast space. We've kind of lost, we don't really see this vastness anymore because we don't see as much light at the sky as we used to through pollution at night, light pollution.
Absolutely. And I believe that's why the ancient cultures of people who still see the light out there in the outback in Australia, the Aborigines, they don't fit into society because they don't need to fit into society because they see the world differently. Because by looking up at the sky, well, besides all those philosophical things about being how small we are, the idea is when you see it, you are connected with it somehow. And when we don't see it, then we just kind of like retreated into our cave, into our shells, and think of ourselves as separate.
Yeah, it seems that we've got so much to learn from these ancient cultures, and to start listening to what they're saying.
Absolutely. And I know I'm just scratching the surface, just starting on my journey, what is fascinating, what I've learned so far. And I hope I learn more, and I will continue to learn more. And learning it intellectually is one thing, but experiencing it and integrating into it, that is a choice to make and to live. Yep.
Oh, Stephen, it's actually been wonderful to speak to you today. I've got lists of so many other questions I'd like to speak to, but would it be possible for us to come back at another time and continue? Because it's been a pleasure to speak with you about this.
Certainly we could do that, Raan. And it's a pleasure speaking with you too. I just hope my ramblings are not too incoherent.
No,
right?
It's been an absolute pleasure. And of course, I was asking you you really was able to unbreak, certain terms that sometimes for some people is very difficult, so what is meditation, time, mindfulness. So that's been really great. So thank you very much. And we'll contact each other and arrange for a second conversation, if that's okay with you.
That's perfectly fine. And thank you very much for having me, Raan. It's a pleasure.
Thank you very much, Stephen.
Thank you. Talk to you again.
And talk to you again. Bye.
Bye. Okay.